indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Matthew.
Quick report, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Boyce, you have a report?
We're up to 39 officers killed in the line of duty throughout the United States. That's a considerable jump. So, no military deaths since our last meeting. So, moment of silence if we may, Mr. Chair. 39 total in the U.S. of A. so far, 2019. Thank you, Chair Paasch.
All right. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
We're going to delay the presentations.
Just the one, until later.
Okay, thank you. I did understand. I'm sorry.
I move we approve the agenda as written.
Have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Paasch.
Aye.
Agenda approved.
All right, next we have presentations under A. We are looking to proclaim May as Children's Educational Awareness Month. And we would like to welcome the Christian School in Brookings Harbor. And if you would like to step up, please. Just so everyone knows, if you step up to the mic or to the podium to speak, please pull the microphones down to you so that we can clearly hear you. And I am thrilled that you would bring your students here to learn about county government and how it works, and we're honored to have you.
Thank you for having us. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mrs. Brewer. I teach the 6th and 7th grades at Brookings Harbor Christian School in Brookings, Oregon. I'd like to introduce you to my class, JL, Sonia, Isaiah, Matthew, and Dorothy. Thank you for allowing us to speak. I'm going to turn over the mic to JL to start us out.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing our request. We'd like to tell you a bit of why we think education is so important to children in our communities and why we think May should be declared Children's Educational Awareness Month.
Education helps teach children to communicate. English, reading, spelling, and public speaking classes give students the skills needed. They learn sentence structures, phonics, and different ways to get their point across. For example, doing everyday activities could be challenging if you didn't know how to spell words. Drivers wouldn't know how to stop at signs unless they knew the written ways to communicate. Children who know verbal ways to communicate get in trouble from their parents less than those who don't know how to listen.
Education is important because you learn the skills that you need for the rest of your life. Some of these skills might include mathematical calculations, computer skills, reading, completing tasks, and survival skills. You learn basic skills on how to survive as an adult. These skills will also be important to learn in order to get a job or do well in college.
Education helps teach children how to socialize with others. Socializing with one another helps our economy. Our economy would collapse if no one could communicate about what to do with their goods. Products would stay in warehouses, and no one could enjoy our everyday appliances. Learning to socialize makes our lives better with friends and family. Educating children and exploring their interests is very important because it helps the student identify their strengths and their weaknesses. Their strengths often become lifelong interests, and those self-strengths encourage their self-confidence. Certain interests can be therapeutic and provide emotional comfort for the student.
Education helps children learn good character traits because it sets boundaries. In the classroom, they experience discipline, which helps later in life. They will learn they must obey rules or suffer the consequences. This is similar to the law. Discipline will help them become upstanding citizens of the United States. Another good character trait school teaches is accountability. You're responsible for your words and actions. It teaches them their actions and words have consequences, whether good or bad.
Educating children on the history of the world helps us learn from mistakes made in the past. Mistakes such as allowing slavery and ignoring genocide. Knowing what has happened in the past helps children be more aware of what's happening now and encourage them to be more proactive in changing our future. Education helps young people secure jobs and/or go to college. In order to go to college, students need to know a minimum amount of history, science, health, English, computer science, and math. Every child should have the opportunity to go to college. Going to college isn't for everyone, but those who want to get a job need an education. They need to know how to learn.
In closing, we hope that by your declaring May as Children's Educational Awareness Month, it brings attention to our children and schools. We hope it's a month where our schools are celebrated, our children are encouraged, and our communities remember that their support helps all of us. Thank you in advance for your attention to this matter. We appreciate the opportunity to share why we think May should be declared Children's Educational Awareness Month. Thank you.
Could I ask JL to step up to the microphone, please? JL, do you plan on going on to continuing education on to college?
Yes, I do.
Have you decided where you're going to look to, what you're going to look to be yet?
I want to be a prosecutor.
Prosecutor, okay. Is there anyone else that's looking in this group that's looking to go on to further education into college? If you'd like to each step up to the microphone, tell us what you're looking forward to doing in the future as of now. We all know we can change.
I would like to be a lawyer.
A lawyer?
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to be a prosecutor or on the other side?
On the other side.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would like to be a paleontologist.
Paleontologist. Wow, that's great. Yeah. I can barely pronounce that one. Anyone else?
I would most likely want to be a weather reporter.
Weather reporter. Good for you.
Especially today.
Well, I would like to say something. This really touches my heart to see you be willing to bring these young people here. You're not kids, you're young people, and you're soon going to be adults. And this does my heart good. This is a fun day to be a county commissioner. And I just want to praise you guys for being willing to come here and speak. It's really moved me. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I?
sure.
That's one of the best presentations I think we've ever. Excuse me. I was going to run to my office and get something for them.
I have to look after them every now and then.
Don't you forget it, yeah. One of the best presentations we've ever had. Were some of you nervous stepping up to the microphone? You know, really, honestly, in my opinion, you all did very, very good. And that's a good sign. You know, the time you talk about education reminds me when I was in junior high, I would have been a lot better off if I'd have spent more time in the library, you know. So welcome. I'm going to run to my office real quick if I could be excused, Mr. Chair, for just, I have something I would like to give you, and thanks for making the trip up here today. The great work you're doing. I'll be right back.
you have any comments, Commissioner Gold?
I'm just really impressed. Is your school on Cape Farello? Yeah. Okay. I drive by that all the time, and you do good work, so continue.
I have a question for JL.
Sure.
JL?
Would you step up to the microphone?
JL, if the county declares May Children's Education Awareness Month, where do the other schools stand on this? Do they support you?
I think that they would support this because it can be a really good thing. It can draw attention to the teachers who work so hard, and we could do a lot of cool stuff with this if it did become Children's Educational Awareness Month.
Okay, do you recommend that this be maybe Children's Education Awareness Month every year or just this year?
I think that it should be every year, because then it would not fade into the background and everybody would be reminded of it each year.
Okay.
Bravo.
Thank you.
I have one more thing also. Would you be willing to maybe have your group, if this commission were to agree to make this Children's Educational Awareness Month, would you be willing to perhaps send a letter to the other schools asking them, or going to meet other school principals as your group and form a group that goes and asks these principals of these other schools to agree to this and come together as a county? I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second, but actually just to get all the other schools on board with this as one group, so that they know what you've done and you're asking them to join join in on this.
Yes, I would love to do that.
Okay, great.
Citizens Vote for a Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Jury Handbook. This is my last one.
I'm gonna have to look over their shoulder. Thank you.
Well, Commissioners, I am deeply moved by this, and proud to offer that we make May of not only 2019 but every year in Curry County to make May Children's Educational Awareness Month. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any further comments?
I would suggest, if you want to make it throughout the county, that you contact each superintendent of schools. And so if you need the contact information, I would be happy to give that to you.
Any further comments? Call for the roll, please.
Mr. Gold.
A definite aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes, thank you.
Chair Paasch.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. May is proclaimed as Children Awareness, Education Awareness Month.
Good job, guys. Good job. I think Julie's going to have an actual document for you later this morning that the commission will sign. Oh, here it is.
Were you going to read it?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Before the Board of Curry County Commissioners in and for the County of Curry, Oregon, in the matter of resolution proclaiming May as Children's Educational Awareness Month. Whereas students are the backbone of our democracy, whereby education provides young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality. And whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, education gives them hope for and access to a productive future. And whereas schools are community linchpins bringing together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common enterprise. And whereas the Brookings Harbor Christian School students have indicated their desire and willingness to learn about county government in their great county of Curry, and whereas a fair representation of students appeared today before this Board of Curry County Commissioners at the regularly scheduled board meeting on May 8th, 2019, with great interest in the dynamics of functioning government. And whereas the Board of Commissioners opened their hearts and minds to the young, eager to learn students, and now, therefore, the Board of Curry County Commissioners hereby resolves to proclaim the month of May as Children's Educational Awareness Month and encourages all county officials, employees, schools, and residents to observe this month as a celebration of county government commingled with our youth in all schools and beyond.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
thanks for reading that. May I ask who wrote that? Do you know? Did you? Very
believe someone
just
did.
incredibly well done. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyce, I think Brenda Starbird had a hand in that.
Council Hope.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not surprised.
Our resolutions generally are not so colorful and beautiful, so just to let you know.
It's usually a
You're
great piece
special.
of paper. All right. So we're going to put aside 4B for right now.
Yes, we're waiting for some speakers to arrive.
Okay, so we'll move on to the consent agenda, which is number 5. The consent agenda is Board of Commissioners minutes for March 13th, 2019, Board of Commissioners meetings for March 20th, 2019, business meeting, a rehire order for Brandon Sousa Smith, Summer Work Crew Parks, approval of building official job description, a hire order for official Mark Bangma, approve Commissioner Boyce as liaison to Curry Fire Defense Board, and change code enforcement officer from part-time to full-time. May I get a motion, please?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Roll, please.
Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes?
Chair Paasch.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Great job on that agenda, consent agenda.
Okay, we're going to move on now to 6A, State Parks Floras Lake Land Swap. And I'm glad to see Chris is here this morning. Sorry if I was a little bit short with you a while ago. I just had several things going on. Couldn't really take time to shake hands and say hello. Just kind of wanted to, if we wanted to have some public comments here first. Tim Palmer.
Hello, I'm Tim Palmer from Port Orford, and I appreciate the Commissioner's interest in this issue, and I'll take you at your word that you all want to do the right thing here for our people and protect this special place. Much has been said about the deal with state parks, and little about other options that have been mentioned. Maybe these comments are no longer relevant, I'm not sure, but I'd like to share my thoughts on those with you now. Here are 3 points that I believe to be true. One is that corporate sponsorship for protection of Floras Lake will never happen. To pay more than market value is not in the interest of a corporation. The lake, for them, the lake is too distant and unrelated to their other activities to be considered mitigation for damages they might have caused. And also, there's really no clear legal option for carbon credits to be used in a deal here. Number 2, if I'm wrong and there is genuine interest, we have to recognize that corporations are huge bureaucracies and the pace of negotiation would require years to navigate. We become embroiled in questions of economics, third parties as regulatory agencies, and complications that easements require. And third, if I'm wrong on both points and a deal is made, the ultimate motive of these corporations would be for their own interest. That's simply and understandably the business world. I have little confidence that their lawyers, executives, and stockholders would prioritize protection of this place, but would seek outcomes for their own advantage. That could include manipulating any easement agreement or reselling the property to an owner unfriendly to us, or flatly violating the easement and dealing with the consequences. In any of these scenarios, the time and expense for us dealing with the problems in the future makes this a bad path, and even if we would prevail in the long run. Even more disturbing along this lines to me is that we who care about this property would forever be dealing not with our own elected commissioners, but with the faceless bureaucracies of corporations that aren't even in this country. Let's be real here. Pembina is a Canadian corporation that's proposing to export American resources to Asia by condemning land from hundreds of private landowners just like us. And more important, the LNG facility will never be built. Consider nothing more than the state's denial of permits this week. Shell is a Dutch and British corporation with a sordid history of legal and community violations. Just go online and look for Dutch Royal Shell by the Corporate Research Project. Meanwhile, GE has stonewalled efforts to clean up PCBs in the Hudson River for 40 years and running. To determine the future of Floras Lake and Boyce Cope County Park, we should be dealing, as we are, with our own county commissioners and with our own trusted state officials, and not corporate enterprises such as these. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ann?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ann Velisis. I'm president of the Kalmiopsis Audubon Society, which has about 400 members here in Curry County that I represent. I want to thank you for continuing the conversation and discussion today about the Floras Lake land swap, which we strongly support. I so much appreciate the interest in this commission of finding a way to conserve Floras Lake. I really appreciate that. At the last workshop on this topic, Commissioner Paasch brought up some new ideas to the table of finding a large company that could afford to buy perhaps the whole property. And I'll be interested to hear your update today. But in my opinion, which is based on a lifetime of being engaged in conservation issues, I feel like it sounds good on the surface, but when we dive into the details, I believe it's going to prove infeasible and unworkable for a number of reasons. Tim has already raised some of them, and will create a hornet's nest of additional problems. So for that reason, I urge you to continue moving forward with the state parks deal right now as a priority, and to continue working on other possible deals with conservation buyers, different companies for the rest of the land. There's still important values there that really need to be addressed. There's coho habitat and there's wetlands. And so those are other values that, you know, if this is a strategy that we want to use of finding mitigation, that maybe we should be able to continue to work on finding some other solution. I wanted to say, Commissioner Paasch has indicated an interest in doing a bigger deal, but I think in this case that actually a small deal is a big deal. And that just requires just the perspective that previous commissions and staff have spent a lot of time, actually wasted a lot of time over the past 15 or more years trying to do a big deal, but to no avail. For all those years and longer, the property has sat empty. The county has had no benefit from it economically. We've just had a lot of headaches and wasted effort. We've really gotten nowhere. The deals have, this deal came about because previous commissions and citizens came together and said, let's work towards something proactive. Let's get something done. Let's stop wasting time. We have seen over the past 15 years work get lost. Work that's been done had to get redone. Information get considered and forgotten as people come and go. So it's very frustrating to citizens. In recent years, I think more commissioners have realized that there is no single bullet for this area or even for solving all of Curry County's problems, and that perhaps a good way to go is to work towards getting little things moving in the right direction. And if we can get a lot of those things happening, that will be the way we succeed. And I think this is one of those cases. We have a solid deal teed up and ready to go. It's a very trustworthy partner, State Parks. And also just want to say, most often to accomplish something big, it often takes doing small things, one after another, with diligence and attention. And so I think we should please not let the perfect be the enemy of the good in this case. A bird in hand is worth two in a bush, and so I thank you for considering my comments and urge you to work towards making a deal with State Parks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Morrow.
Good morning. Bob Morrow, Langlois. I want to start out by commenting and commending you guys. You're a really hard act to follow. And great job. And I hope the Forest Lake land swap has as much success as your resolution did. Love to see you guys accept the Forest Lake land swap as proposed. We've been going around on this for a very long time, as we've heard from Ann, and we've heard multiple commissioners looking for the home run deal, and it hasn't happened. We've heard from Tim about foreign companies coming in, trying to come up with a agreement with their teams of lawyers. They really don't have a lot of interest in what the citizens of Curry County are about. They don't live here. They don't want to live here. They just want to take advantage of that. Chris Havel in the state of Oregon, however, different story. They will take care of the citizens, not only of the state, but also of Curry County. So I did a little bit of research on some of the Jordan Cove mitigation efforts. You spoke of the last time we were here about the 100 acres, and talked to Tyler Krug from the Army Corps of Engineers. He was saying that there is no conservation easement on that property and that there is no restrictions on the deed. I went to the clerk's office and she had no information about conservation easements on that property. You know, it's so we have to be careful about how we go forward with the south end of Forest Lake. So I would suggest to you today that you take action. This is listed on the action item section. I really don't see where 30 more days before the June 5th deadline you set in March is really going to move the needle. If you're talking with corporations or even the Oregon, Southern Oregon Land Conservancy, I talked with them. They don't really have the funds right now. They'd have to do a fundraising effort in order to get enough funds to even approach beyond the appraised value that you are looking for. It's not going to happen. Folks aren't going to pay more than the appraised value, or certainly not much more. So I would urge you to make a motion today to accept the proposal from the states. You know, really, I have not heard anybody in Curry County come up to this podium and say they are against the land swap. I know that Commissioner Paasch has his moments of focusing because he's the new guy, and I appreciate that, but we've been hearing this over and over for 10 years. The time for action is today. I recommend that you make a motion, and Chris can go home with a deal to bring to his own process, which will take several meetings for him as well. So let's get going on this. Let's get 90 acres out of the way, conserved, and worry about the other 400 acres later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just so you know, this is on as an action item, but it's on as an action item if you read the AGRS for discussion only. So this is not to be acted on today.
Isn't it possible to make a motion with the background?
It could be, but I would, well, with my comments on this, I'd actually like to continue with this right now, and if I could ask Chris to come up, please. I will say to all of you, I have gone no farther with anything to do with General Electric, and I have had no further discussions with Shell on this. But I have had a couple of more discussions with the Jordan Cove project, and I will say that as of about 48 hours ago, they have pulled all funding on everything because they've had some license delays. It's my understanding they've had license delays for another year. I'm not looking to kick this down the road for another year, another 6 months, another few months. I want to get this dealt with. So I would hope that you would appreciate that I'm trying to do the best thing that I can for everyone in this county, not Langlois, not Floras Lake. I'm looking to make everyone in this county as happy as I can for what I was voted in to do, and that's my job, is to answer to all the constituents in this county. So with that said, I think at this point it is time to try to work with the Parks Department a little stronger language on that. I think through emails, through Ms. Schmelzer and the other board members here, we've talked a little bit further about some things that some from the North County may not be aware of. But I have also had some conversations with Jay Trost about McVeigh and some of the other properties that are available in the county. And you kind of touched on it lightly in an email that there may be some interest in that. And I was just wondering if you've had any further conversations with anyone and above you on that, as you said you may have to have, if you got any farther along on that.
Yeah, Chair Paasch, members of the Commission, Chris Havel, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Our developed McVeigh Rock State Park property in South County has been the subject of trade discussions in the past. And while we would prefer to address all of the state park footprint in the county at once through a master planning effort to look for other opportunities jointly, so that we maintain the presence that we need to serve Curry County residents and statewide residents, but we balance that with your desire, your capability to take on other properties for public benefit. That looking at all of that as a package makes more sense. But that said, McVeigh Rock is sort of one of those low-hanging fruit properties where we have entertained options to transfer to the county in the past, and we'd be willing to continue those discussions if that's the option that the county commission wants to pursue. For this proposal, it's a little more complicated. It's not as ready to go as the Port Orford Cedar Wayside property, mainly because there is a state law that prohibits us from transferring oceanfront land that's inside the beach zone, pardon me, not oceanfront, that we cannot transfer that to any other non-state entity. So because the McVeigh parcel crosses into the ocean shore zone and includes a substantial amount of ocean shore zone property, it gets more complicated. So if, and I'm here not to make a presentation, but to simply answer any questions that will help you move toward a decision in advance of our June commission meeting, our own commission meeting, or I can give them an update. So if you want to pursue a McVeigh Rock, Floras Lake as a package, we're certainly willing to come to the table on that. It will take longer, and there's no guarantee of success there because of these other complications. For Port Orford Wayside, if you're ready to move beyond that as a group, I'm willing to here to help you in that conversation. What we're looking for now, especially for our June meeting, is a clear sign of what you're interested in. Is it Floras Lake, Port Orford Cedar? Is it Floras Lake and McVeigh Rock? Or are we moving past that now and going to wait for our master planning effort, which will be in the 1921 biennium for us, where we come back with our state park planning crew and you and our local field staff and look at the total state park package. Where do we want to make trail investments? Where do we want to make park investments? What's the public service provided by the state park footprint in the county? We can move to that if that's where you're comfortable. So I'm really here just to let you know that McVeigh Rock, certainly, if we want to go through that, but there could be hidden pitfalls in that could derail the whole thing. I don't know.
I was told, and this is just discussions with people, that actually the state came to the county with McVeigh and offered it to them, basically, and said, we'd like you to take this.
Yep.
And this was about 3 years ago.
That's right.
So I don't know how deep the pitfalls would be on that. If it could get handled pretty quickly, I think it would be great. Commissioner Boyce, I have good peripheral vision, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
That is my recollection, but I've never heard the concern you have or you just identified as far as state law that would prohibit that. I might have missed it, and that's okay. I just want to finish up here real quick with keep this discussion going today. A lot of people traveled here. I think that's your intent. I just want to kind of support that, and I think a lot can be done today towards getting a better idea where we are and how we can proceed, perhaps how we should proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you might want to, if I may ask, you might just want to stay up there for a while.
One
Chair.
second, please. Let me look at some notes. Go ahead.
I have a question for you,
Please.
Chris. If I remember correctly, at the last meeting, one of the neighbors recommended that the county take the Wayside property, which is across from a school, and that we use it as, I think it was a shooting range, which is a concern to me. You know, I don't really agree with that philosophy, so I'm just wondering if you feel that that property that we would be retaining next to Floras Lake, if that would be a better site for a shooting range?
Wow.
I don't have a comment on that specifically, other than we look to our parks to provide a certain experience. And when we're considering acquisition, one of the reasons we do that is to provide buffer that insulates the park experience from other land uses around it, where those land uses may be incompatible. So not speaking about the idea of a shooting range, and I'm sorry, I don't recall that comment, so I haven't thought deeply about it, but I'm just going to set up Floras Lake as this quiet, peaceful, natural experience, and then just compare that to the experience provided by a shooting range, which is a valuable outdoor recreation experience for sure. The question is whether those uses are compatible with each other.
Well, I'm just, you know, if the county, so the state is looking at taking a portion of that property, which means the county retains a portion. And what does the county do with that property? And it's, by the comments made, it appeared to me that maybe that was something that was desired in that area, and I'm just wondering if that remaining county property would be better off for that type of land use than the Wayside property across from the school.
Yeah, and haven't considered the kinds of use that you might put the Wayside parcel that we're offering to, and I'll leave that completely in your hands. I would say that adding that 90 acres of county property to the state park system would provide an additional buffer that would make any use on the remaining county acreage possibly more compatible with Floras Lake, because we've got a little extra buffer between us. That frees, I think, some of the options up to do with the remaining county property anything that that is suitable for that property and that passes land use muster. So yeah, I see those things sort of working together. If we were talking about placing a shooting range on the parcel that we're considering adding to the state park system at Floras Lake, I think you would expect us to have some real concerns about that.
I'm just trying to figure out, you know, what we would do with that leftover property.
Yes, yes.
It makes,
of
course, much more sense to us to swap all of our property versus retaining a portion and then maybe having pressure to put some type of land use like that on that property.
Yep. Council Huddle.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I took
nice.
the initiative, but we have a lot of folks in the audience and some newcomers who might not know what we're talking about. This is the northern part of Curry County. Maybe you all have been up, you drive up 101. This is Cape Blanco, where the lighthouse is. There's a school. Okay,
You're doing pretty good.
Property we're talking about for the folks in the audience. It's not that.
Click on the X on the township, next to the townships, it'll close. Up, right there, yep. Close, there you go.
Sir. Trying to zoom in just a little bit more here. Were you going to show the piece by the school?
Yeah.
So for the audience, all these little cross hatches here and this little bulb here are owned by Curry County. And they were in a crosshatch because at one time they were private development. And then they didn't pay their taxes and the county foreclosed on this property and owns it. And we're trying to figure out what to do with all this county property up here. It's 400 plus acres. And then this area here is owned by the state. And you have your state parks coastal trail system there, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so what the state is proposing is we take this part of our property and then they'd be willing to take that and add it to their property here. And then you've heard from some of the folks in the audience in the row behind you, they more or less live in this neighborhood up here around the park, but they're also Sorry, okay, I said more or less, but anyway, listen, I don't want to quibble. Bob Morrow mentioned he's from Langlois, which is up the road, and Tim Fallon is from down the road. But they also represent the individuals who they said they represent. I'm not going to try to put words in your mouth, but they're concerned about the future of the lake for you know, just keeping it as it seems like as much as it is like it is now in prosperity. So then the state also owns, besides those pieces there, they own a piece down here by Pacific High School. And again, Chris, I might need your help where exactly that Pacific High piece is. It's here.
And that little green blocks right across
Yep.
the school here, our market.
Yep, so the Pacific High is here, and then the piece of the state's there. So we've been in discussions with them that have kind of been just going on for a while, and this is the further of those discussions. Talk about the county getting this piece from the state, and the state getting that little fold out piece from the county. And so that's just some background for you all. I don't know, have any of you ever been to Floras Lake or up that way?
Anyway.
Okay, good. Well, I just wanted to give the background of what we're talking about here, Mr. Chairman.
Very helpful.
People could get a visual. That's all I had, but I just wanted to help everybody understand what's going on as part of the whole government experience today.
And that's one of the reasons I invited Chris here. And Chris, again, I'd like to thank you for taking time. I want you to understand that we're not here to waste your time, and I just hope that you understand that. And I hope that everyone that has concerns from the Lake Floras area understands that I'm not here to waste your time. I'm looking into this, hopefully, for the best that we can do for the entire county. So I appreciate the continuing language on this. I personally would like to see, and I know you mentioned a couple different scenarios there. I personally would like to see this getting worked into this whole deal, if that's possible. But that's just my, we have two other commissioners here that have a vote in that. But if we could work somehow work McVeigh into this, because it was offered to the county a few years ago, and if we can get around that state language on this, I would like to see that included in this deal, and then to work in partnership with state parks to do whatever this county can do to better our state parks, and also the state to work with us to make Oregon a better experience. I'm very interested in conserving these properties in perpetuity and protecting them for our grandchildren. So that's where I am with it.
Sure. Thank you again. Initially, no, I'm not interested in the McVeigh Park as part of this deal, because I think the deal is pretty crisp. I think you're taking a risk, the county's taking a risk, but the whole broader picture was starting that process, a relationship between the county and the state. I think we all have the same interests when it comes to that property. So there's even been some enthusiasm, some momentum, and so as we move forward, there's also a trust relationship. The more I meet you and your people, the less bureaucracy I see, which is also, to me, very encouraging as a citizen and, as a county commissioner. So frankly, you're staying true to your word. You researched this, you spent a lot of time on it. I have to admit, I even had a little hope that it was, could be a very clean deal on the other 400 some whatever acres, Mr. Chair. And I think that door's still open. That's why I don't really want to cloud this, for lack of a better term, cloud this potential offer, what we have on the table between us and the state parks. So, when it comes to my family, I used to joke and say it was the Copes that wanted to donate that property, not the Boyces, Yeah. But, my grandparents raised 12 kids. A lot of my cousins were born in Langlois. Bev Klarna was just appointed Secretary of State. We're very proud of her. Born in Langlois. And if you called her up right now and said, we're going to go the corporate route on that, as conservative as she is in her political and philosophical views, she would probably go, you've got to be kidding. Court, are you in on that? Well, yeah, let me explain. No, we want to save that property. And I know that is your intent, straight from the heart as well. So Again, the whole North County thing, there's just nothing else like it, and I think it's a real positive move forward. Sure, I'm ready to vote today. I'm not pushing you in that direction, Mr. Chair, but I need something compelling to wait another week or two or three, and I didn't hear that today, despite some very committed efforts that you have made.
Commissioner Gold?
I'm going to just step out here. I think we need to take baby steps here. This is a good place to start and to start negotiating with other deals. I've been to McVeigh Park, and that's a beautiful park, and I would hope that we could eventually get that, but I think we need to start today. So I'm going to make a motion that we accept the offer from the state parks today.
I have a question. What is that offer and the details of that offer? I don't want to, pardon me, Mr. Chair, but I don't want to get out ahead of this to just,
Are you in agreement to keep the discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you
there
see
are
my
three
point?
different offers, actually, I believe. One is 70 acres, one is 90 acres, or 70 acres with a 20-acre easement, or easement of protection, and actually there were two offers, I believe, not three.
Yeah, it was the
Two
second
alternatives.
offer that you had said that you would be putting trails on it and so forth, and I thought that would be really good for Boyce Cove Park, the one we've got right now. So I'm going to make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'm not going to second till I'm comfortable that you're okay with the discussion level we've had and whether you want to carry on anything additional. I want to give you opportunities.
I am one voice in this board, and you've already said that you think that you've heard nothing that needs to bring this board any further down the road. So if you'd like to make a second, that's fine.
Okay, let me, if I may, Mr. Chair, let me clarify. I just heard you say that I didn't want to bring anything further down the road. If that's the way it's interpreted, that's not what I meant. I'm ready to vote today, and I want to give you an opportunity to say, no, we need to delay this a little bit longer for whatever reason, and I would support you on that. But if you don't have that, then yes, I am willing to absolutely willing to second Commissioner Gold's motion.
Well, it's like I've told this board and I've told the citizens of this county. I'm not going to kick this can down the road. You know, I had an interest to talk to some people, some corporate people, about conserving the property. They all got back to me. We've talked about it on several occasions, and they've come back with no responses on that. So do I want to, you know, keep looking? Would I like to? Yes. Do I think it could be fruitful? I would say probably minimally, yes. But, you know, again,
what was a gallon?
It's frustrating for me because I think there's more here than we're seeing, and I feel like the hammer, because it's been being worked on for so many years, the hammer's kind of fallen on me with this because I've only been a commissioner for a few months and been able to work on this. If I took you in my office right now, I got to file this thick on it. That's how much work I've done on this. So, you know, it's frustrating for me because I would like to have another 6 months to work on this, but I know that's not what everyone in this county wants. So, you know, we've got a June deadline. Am I going to get any farther on this between now and June? Probably not. So would I like to have a great relationship with our Parks Department and hopefully have a future that we can work something out with McVeigh to grow the parks in this county and conserve them in the future? Absolutely.
And if I may, just to clarify the offer here, that in exchange for our Port Orford Wayside property right along 101, which is undeveloped, that we take ownership of 90 acres of county property adjacent to Floras Lake, which constitutes the 70 acres you originally offered, plus another 20 acres in the same cove to balance the value between the properties, to make them roughly equivalent. So that's where the 90 acres comes from. There originally was a 70-acre offer. We're going to add 20 acres to that to get to the 90. So that's the property part of the proposal. There's a series of conditions that you've requested that we find agreeable, that we enter into an investment plan for trails, to connect the Boys Cove Park with Floras Lake and on to Cape Blanco. We don't know what the extent of that investment is. What we're saying is we need to sit down and develop a 5-year investment plan for trails in the area. That's fine. That we also engage in a long-term conversation about the possibility of additional land transfers with the county, between the county and the state park system. And that's what I mean by entering into our master planning process in the 2019-2021 biennium to look for other opportunities for property transactions. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know which acreage it involves, whether it involves the remaining 400 acres or so along Floras Lake, acreage that we're not especially interested in, but there may be other opportunities. So let's go into our master planning process and talk about those other opportunities as they come up. But sit down and actually talk about it rather than talking about it. So, and I'm sorry, there was one other thing in our offline discussion, and I can't recall what it is, but those were the two salient ones: trails planning and additional master planning. So,
Council Huddle.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chair. So again, this was listed as a action item, but it's also on the AGRS said discussion only. So I'm not sure that your staff is prepared to give you any advice or direction on this. I think what usually happens at a presentation, the board would give direction to staff to bring back a document with the details that have been discussed for consideration and an ultimate vote. And that's what I would interpret the motion today to be, to direct staff to bring you back a document that would contain all the details that the state parks representative was talking about, whatever conditions we were going to impose, for you then to know exactly what was before you to vote on. But to just vote without a document on a land transaction is very unusual and not what I would recommend. So I think directing staff to work with state parks representative to bring back a document for your thoughtful consideration on a vote would be a good intermediate step.
We could adopt in principle, though, subject to the recommendation you just identified, correct?
I think just directing us to bring you back something at the next meeting so you can actually read it, study it, decide if it's really what you want to do. It's the same thing. You're giving us in principle saying go ahead and bring this back to us, but without all the details ironed out, I'm not comfortable, that we can have an agreement.
Mr. Melzer?
I would agree with council. I think we need, if we're getting a direction, we need to come back with something that is in the form with a legal description and details. And I would also recommend that it not be decided at the next meeting, but June 5th. We told people we would make a decision on June 5th, and I think in the sake of transparency, that's what people are expecting. There may be people here that, or maybe people that would like to be at the meeting when that decision is made that are not here. So I think we need to stick with that timeline for the sake of transparency and what we told the public we would do.
Commissioner Gold.
Well, I did read the proposal in detail, and maybe it's not legal enough.
Well, it wasn't in the packet, for sure.
It wasn't in this packet,
right.
But it was in the previous packet, so, for the last time we had a meeting about this issue. So, I don't know that we need to wait until June 5th to vote. I'll agree that maybe we need a more legalized proposal, which is fine, but I know you're under constraints, timeline constraints. Is that true?
Yes, and our previous discussion was that by June 5th you'd have a decision.
Right.
And I'm sorry, my recollection wasn't that it was the date on which you would make a decision, but that by that date, no later than that date. But whatever you'd like to do. So we're ready to help draft an actual detailed, well, including a legal description and exactly what we're agreeing to as conditions of the sale. We can go to work on that right away. So by June 5th, earlier is better because we are putting together our June Commission meeting agenda now, and we have our own public notice requirements that we need to fulfill for a property transaction of this sort. So earlier is always better,
Okay, I will amend my motion to move that we get a legal description, and at our next meeting, which would be in 2 weeks, we vote on that.
22nd, Mr. Chair. We have Planning Director Crockett here. Maybe she has something, no, nothing to contribute? Next time.
No.
Okay. So,
Do we have a second?
I want to have clarification on the amended motion, if I may, Mr. Chair, just so I understand.
You want me, okay.
Yeah, I think...
The motion is to get an exact legal description of the resolution, or whatever we're going to call it, the deal, and then put it on our next possible meeting, which will be in 2 weeks. And that gives us enough time to publicize, so anybody that wants to come can come.
Terrific. 14 days. So I'm going to second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Call for the roll, please.
Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Paasch.
No.
Motion carried 2-1.
Okay, at this time we have to take a 10-minute break, so we're going to go on break. But before we do, though, I would like to say something to the youth that are here. Again, I'd like to thank you all for coming here. And secondly, I would like to say to you that you just saw something in county government that we deal with all the time, and that is not everyone always agrees with everything that happens. So when you're in meetings and stuff in your life, and as you go through your life, always remember that you don't always get what you want in a meeting, and that it's constructive criticism and agreement and disagreement doesn't always have to end in anger. It can end in what's best for everyone. So you just saw county government at work here. We're adjourned. Recess, I'm sorry, we're recess. About 4B. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, Commissioner Boyce.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, Ms. Schmelzer, we have one public comment. Mr. Barnes? Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Boyce had requested this be put on the agenda. He had proposed a presentation to just educate the public and the board about adult businesses and what the codes currently say and some of the societal issues. One of the speakers was Leah Seavey. She had to leave. She did leave some information for you, though. It was put on your desk. And the other speaker was Skip Hunter, who did not show up today. So I did speak with Commissioner Boyce, and we discussed the fact that since this is something that was of concern, he did receive a lot of comments from people regarding adult businesses in the county. My recommendation to him, since the speakers are not here, is that staff just look at this a little closer and see if there is anything we can do, and then bring it back to the board, perhaps at a later date in an ordinance fashion or some update, basically, on the issue.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gold.
And I just noticed in your, I believe it was in the packet, about some of the legal ramifications, and you have to treat all businesses equally. You can't just all of a sudden say, just because you're doing this, you can't, First Amendment issues, so.
Yeah, there are a lot of First Amendment issues that certainly come into play. A lot of legal issues. There are some zoning things you can do through zoning, very limited, but there are some things you can do. So the planning director and council and I can discuss it and just come back to you at a later date with more information.
Okay.
I think we also need to look to maybe setting guidelines for business licenses in the county.
Yes, and we are still working on the business license ordinance. I'm trying to find the Word version of the draft that was reviewed by the last board. So we can tweak that a little bit and bring that back too.
Now, whether we don't let people, when they come in and want to open a business, they understand fully what the guidelines are to be able to open that business in the county. So we need to set those in the county. Mr. Barnes, did you still have a comment?
Yes.
Thank you, David Barnes. I remember the last business license proposal that came before this board, the last board, and it was resoundingly spoken down and shot down by the people here. It generated from Chief Brazil. For some reason, I remember it coming out of the Planning Commission, but I remember it being shot down pretty resoundingly. One thing I do want to say is that, you're talking about specifically adult businesses here, and quite frankly, there's nobody beating down our doors coming to open businesses in Curry County. And I think it's to my way of thinking, to my thoughts, I think that it's overextending your authority to become the morality police and to start legislating morality in this county. And, you know, if we have businesses who want to come here, the market decides who stays in business and who doesn't. I don't think it's a job of these commissioners, of you commissioners, to do that. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. I'm very sensitive to the concerns that the people have in the long term. If anybody is diligent and reliable, it's Skip Hunter, so I have no idea what happened today. I was very anxious, Mr. Chair, to hear his presentation, certainly Leah Seavey. These are the people that deal with this residual on a daily, weekly basis. The family's broken. So I want to assume that with the board here, collectively, we have a consensus that says, yeah, we want to do whatever we can to set the guidelines, as you said, Ms. Melzer, on where our county's going to go. If we just throw up our hands and say, well, it's a free speech issue, I want to really look deep at what the consequences are for our culture and our kids. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, again, I think that I don't think we should be saying who comes and goes in this county for business. I think anyone that wants to open a business in this county should be allowed to open a business as long as they meet the guidelines that this county sets for those businesses to open. I think they should be clear. And you know, if it's an inappropriate business, whatever it may be, perhaps the zoning of that business becomes important as well. You're not refusing them to have the business, but you are at least restricting the location of the business. So,
Mr. Chair, there are people in our county that absolutely believe that within a few years, I guess the kids are gone now, but the sex trafficking, young kids, anybody that wants to promote that is not a growing issue in our country, and that any notion that we are somehow isolated from that, does that come back to the adult bookstore? I don't have enough information and background and experience and study to determine if there's a connection. I know a lot of responsible people believe there are connections. So I don't think this is going to go away. I'm not convinced the county can do anything, but I hope that we will jointly work towards doing what we can do. Thank you again.
Agreed. All right, so we're going to move on to, we've gone through A on Floras Lake, so we'll go to B, the Special Tax District. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, this was actually put on for a presentation. Commissioner Paasch had wanted this put on so he could share a pie chart and lead the board through a discussion on this. So I'll refer it over to you.
Okay, I don't have a pie chart for the...
It was the same one that was submitted with the agenda routing slip.
No, I have that, but I don't have it on here. I just want to make aware, you know, that to the constituents of this county, some of the things that we have here. I've spoken actually to Commissioner Gold briefly about this a week or so ago. I have an interest in the special districts of the county. We have an enormous amount of special districts in the county, and we're looking
47
for a county of 17,000 or 23,000 people. Yeah, I think it's one of the largest in the state per capita. So we're looking to possibly consolidate some of these special districts. We're going to look to have some meetings with some of the special districts in the county in the coming weeks and months to look at their budgets, to look at where they are. There may be a couple of special districts that aren't necessary anymore. I think we've identified a couple that aren't active at all anymore that we may be able to get rid of, and again to consolidate a few more. So there wasn't a whole lot that I had on this right now, but I will say this, you know, a couple of numbers for the county to let you realize, and again, we have a June 11th meeting with the schools and SWAC, which will be a workshop that I hope will be well attended. But when we see things like the entire general fund for our county is $1.8 million, and just SWAC's tax district from this county is 2.137, $2,137,000 for the campus down in Brookings, and the entire general fund of this county is only $1.8 million. It just, these are things that we want to talk about because they need to be talked about. I think we need to start a conversation on these at a minimum. Commissioner Gold?
I think you need to be aware of the process to dissolve a district. I just happen to have the paperwork. If you'd like that, I've got that. It's pretty complicated. It has to go to the voters, and it's one special district at a time. You can't just, and then not only that, if you want some of that money to come to the county, the voters have to vote on increasing the property tax. So it's not an easy process.
Right. We talked about this briefly a week or so ago, and you did offer this document to me a couple of weeks ago. And I understand that this is something that the voters would have to go through on a line-by-line item. I'm not saying that I'm looking to dissolve districts. I'm looking for districts to come in and let's talk about their budget lines and can we reduce some of these that have maybe been increased over the years and they've got excesses in their budgets. I'm looking to better the bottom line for the general fund of this county. And, you know, again, I'm not saying we're going to accomplish anything, but we need to shake the bushes here and see if, you know, if we can accomplish something. I think if our voters are informed about where your money goes, and I'm telling you that, you know, one district gets more money than the entire general fund of this county, I would imagine our constituents in this county would want to have a good accounting of that, and you would want to know where your tax dollars are going. So that's all I want to have, is I want to have information brought into the county so that we can relate to everyone in this county where their tax dollars are going and making sure those dollars are well spent. I would also like to talk with Mr. Barnes maybe later this morning or at your convenience, sir, about some potential questions that I have on some things that you may be able to answer with your expertise. That's all I have on this, Ms. Schmelzer.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to go now into 6C, Commissioner Boyce, Wolf Compensation Package.
Well, I just want to encourage the board, I assume this is an action item, that we can form our own Curry County committee. It's got different titles, you can correct me, but it's either the Wolf Advisory Committee or the Compensation Committee for Ranchers and Farmers. We were turned down by the Oregon, that's a program under the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and we went to a lot of work to send them a letter, if you recall, Mr. Chair, asking if we could join forces with Coos County, and unfortunately we were turned down on that. The answer we got was not satisfactory, but nonetheless we're on our own, and so I'm hoping we might be able to turn that to our advantage, subject to the board's approval. I have 3 people that are committed and willing to serve on that committee. So I think we need to vote today to go ahead and, as I understand it, form that advisory committee. Should we call it?
How many people have to be on the committee?
I was going to ask you that.
I believe it was 7. That's what I said.
Thank you for confirming that, Director Crockett. Okay.
So we're 4 short.
Well, but I couldn't really spend a lot of time on that until we had board approval for this. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you reminded me of that. I appreciate that.
Correct. So if the board agrees this would be an ordinance, then it would move forward as an ordinance, and once officially adopted, then we could advertise for the positions.
So your motion would be to make the ordinance?
Correct.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Discussion?
My only question would be is how prevalent are the wolves here in this county? I mean, are they at our door right now, or what's happening?
Well, I will say I personally am minus 2 calves right now in a herd of only 60. And I will say that John Mather, who lives behind me, has been in discussions with my wife, Bonnie, and he is missing dozens of sheep. Now, we're not saying those are wolves, but I think we all know that they're coming. They are in Curry County. I think they've been spotted in Curry County in a couple places, and they have pretty solid evidence of that. But I again, would rather be proactive in this and not reactive. So it's nice to get out in front of it and prepare. and get our name out there as a county that is proactive, so that we can be in touch with everything going on as things move forward.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, I'm just a little frustrated. I'm not sure if I understand why that it's almost, it at times seems like a public denial that they're really not here. And 2 years ago we were predicting this for 5 years from now. Well, it happened a year later. There's no doubt in my mind that it was a North County kill, that it's not probable, or they wouldn't have labeled it as probable. The consequences it is for our deer and elk population, the consequences it is for ranchers and farmers, the consequences it is for our economy. So I'm just a little bit on edge with the damage that these non-native species can and will do to our county. And to hear that you may have a concern, and other ranchers, and I didn't know that, that even heightens my alertness on this additionally. So we need, thank you for bringing that up and identifying that, and for suggesting we be proactive on this, and maybe we can have some positive impact to control what is very likely coming and is, in fact, I believe, here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
One more comment I'd like to make on this. I think, you know, we've already got a very fragile, it's already very fragile, the amount of deer and elk that we have that predators eat with our, you know, cougar and wolf or coyotes and all that. To introduce another predator into this county, I think would really knock that lopsided. Between that and the fires and how much wildlife we've lost in fires in this county in the last few years. So our wildlife in this county is decimated, and to allow another predator to come into this county and continue, I think it's one deer every third day they eat. I'm not sure.
Cougar eats one a week.
Okay. So I mean,
and if they have cubs, two deer a week.
And I know they also kill and drop when the parents are teaching their cubs how to hunt. They just kill and drop. So to be proactive on something like this, I think is a wise decision for us to make. So
if we can get the word out, Mr. Chair, that folks that might be interested, there are some requirements. I was challenged that, you know, I'm biased against wolves, so I probably shouldn't serve by one citizen. Of course, I obviously disagree with that. I'm going to fight for the best interests of the people. And so, but there does need to be somewhat of a diverse representation on that board, which I will respect. And if people are interested, I would really appreciate them contacting our office as soon as possible.
Yeah, and that's what I would say to the press. If you do notice this in the papers, to please notice it, that we are seeking people to come in and offer to be on this advisory committee. Yes, sir.
Matt Hall, Port Orford News, Curry County reporter, Myrtle Point Herald. So this is setting up a compensation board in case you can go ahead and prove that it's a wolf kill, so that the owners of the livestock can be compensated?
Yes, they're compensated actually through the Oregon Department of Agriculture, which gets the funding from the federal government. But in the interest, it's not just limited to that responsibility. The committee would have all the opportunities to help in any way they can, in addition to notifying the public awareness. I would just offer that once this wolf kill may never actually be officially confirmed. However, it is the first wolf attack on the Oregon coast in the last 100 years.
My sources tell me that afterwards the ranchers seriously doubt and thought that it was dogs.
Okay, that is very good news.
Conflicting ideas about that, but I will follow through and notify folks if you so move and this becomes necessary.
But may I ask a question? You feel like it was dogs, or you had people?
I don't have any idea because I did not investigate. There was just further discussion, and a rancher indicated to me that that was what they had heard.
Okay, so the dogs are still out there, or the wolves are still out there. Okay, thank you, Matt.
But either way, compensation. Can you be compensated for, say, a wild dog kill?
That's responsibility also we would need to learn. So that the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife is being non-committal when they use the word probable. And there's a variety of reasons they do that because of the requirements they have from the federal government under the Endangered Species Act, which the wolf is about to be taken off the threatened list. And what are the consequences for Curry County? Is that our focus? Yes, we all hoped and prayed it would be a dog kill and not a wolf pack. And it's almost remarkable that there hasn't been anything that I'm aware of. Additionally, the word out of Salem, though, Mr. Hall, is yes, it was definitely a wolf kill.
Well, no, they said probable. I mean, I've read all of the stuff as well, I believe. Mr. Paasch, what area are you talking about when you say that you have 2 down and you have somebody that's missing dozens of sheep?
North Bank Road, River Road.
Okay. How far out?
1 mile.
Just 1 mile? Okay.
I own the ranch, the Cornerstone Ranch there on North Bank.
Any kind of physical, anybody going out there looking for tracks, signs, anything like that?
We're just setting that up right now. My neighbor and I are just setting that up, that we are going to
go
have
out,
a
you
group
walk
go
the
out and
property,
look,
you
yes.
look for sign, you can find
because we can't even find, on some of these, we can't even find carcasses.
You can set your cameras and stuff like that. Well, I'll cooperate, but don't rush to judgment.
We're not. If I were to be on this committee, I would make sure it's a confirmed wolf kill, not a probable wolf kill.
We did, thank you, we did absolutely take that caution from the very beginning and been unwavering on that.
Wolves are social critters. They are native to this area. They're intelligent. They do have a spot in the environment. Sharks are ostracized and hunted down at one point in time. Now they're changing that too. Just don't rush to judgment.
I just challenge you that if you do your research, I think you'll have some question whether they are a native species. They are a tremendous mix. North American, the heritage of the original wolf, the Canadian wolf, coyotes, all the above.
I'm not debating hybrids or anything else like that.
Okay.
I'm just saying that wolves were here before us.
Okay. So did you have a motion? Oh, no, I'm sorry, we were on.
I just want to follow up to just mention that I was very curious about this also, and so I reached out to ODFW, and if you guys are interested in learning more, I would encourage you to invite the person to come and explain very carefully how they distinguish between probable and possible, and maybe Court, you've already done this yourself, but it's very careful. They have a process, and so if you would like to become more informed about it, I found it very useful, and so I would suggest that would be perhaps helpful for your committee and for you.
We are working on a presentation. Great idea. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
I'll say aye with the caveat that we research things better as far as, is this me?
No, it's JJ's.
Way to go, JJ. That we research things more thoroughly as we go through this, so that's my vote.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Paasch.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimous. Motion carried unanimously.
All right. Next, we have Brookings Head Start Contract Award, Council Huddle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So in your packet is a award of a contract to Adroit Construction, and it reflects, all the bids came in over our budget, and so this reflects negotiations of savings of up to a little bit over $100,000 from the bids to get it within our budget, and so staff is just recommending approval. If you need any more background about the Brookings Head Start, I can talk some more, but I think most of you have been tracking this project for the last couple of years.
Commissioner Gold?
I just have one little question. How much over the allotted amount was the bid?
Oh, thank you. So it was more than $100,000 over our budget, and so our architect, and the details of the negotiations are actually in your packet. It's on near the middle of the contract, but more than $100,000 is what we were able to value engineer after the bid. So, and it involved switching out some materials, painting things instead of putting up vinyl sidings, things like that. So and also, by the way, the original bids included what we'd call groundwork installing a playground, leveling the backyard for a playground, some things that weren't involved with the building. And so those were removed from the amount of the contract. And the idea is the Head Start folks can probably apply for separate grants to get the playgrounds built and the earthwork done there. So the bids did not, the adjustments did not affect the scope of the overall project. We're still going to get the building remodeled with the goals of adding better windows, more light, and a better learning environment for the kids. So with that, staff's just recommending approval.
Okay. I move that we approve the contract.
I have a second.
Second, Mr. Chair. Good news.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Paasch.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Good work, Council Huddle and all.
We're lucky to have such a great cheerleader.
Director's report, Ms. Schmelzer.
Yes, I want to just give you an update on a few things. One is we have received responses to our request for proposals on the strategic plan. We had 14 firms actually respond to our request. We've narrowed it down to 2, and we're bringing those 2 in for interviews. Have also begun the process of seeking the funds to actually pay for that plan. We'll know tomorrow whether or not one of them will actually help fund that. Another one was the board had discussed moving their meetings to Thursdays, and Thursdays do work for all 3 of you. There is one Thursday a month that doesn't work for one of the commissioners, so we'll just work around that every month, which currently right now we're only meeting 3 of the 4 anyway, so it'd still be consistent. I'm looking to start that new schedule as of June 1st. We've also talked in the past about the Youth Pathways Partnership Program, and we are working with a grant writer right now on that. So we are hoping that we can get that funded and then bring that proposal to you for an actual action item to approve it. Again, it doesn't pay though until we actually know that we have funding for the program. The last thing is I am working on 2 RAC grants. One would be is on behalf of the sheriff, and the other one is just assisting with somebody who's working on a RAC grant to bring aquatic education to the county. Those applications are due today, so we'll see. It takes a while before you know whether or not you're approved for those, but hopefully within about 2 months or 3 months we should know if we have funding for that. The one for the sheriff would actually be to fund law enforcement in the forest lands.
So do we need to bring a motion before the board for the Thursday meeting, or just agree to it here?
The board had previously discussed the idea of moving it forward, and I said I would just report back whether that's possible. So I'll just proceed with a schedule, and then we'll start scheduling the meetings accordingly.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chair, unless you're really determined, I was essentially 50-50 initially, and now I have 2 pretty important boards. The Travel Southern Oregon Coast meets on Thursdays, also the Coosa-Douglas Business Development meets on Thursdays. And I think there might be one more. And so, at least for right now, through the budget process, maybe stall the possible moving of to the Thursday dates. I haven't seen a real compelling advantage to the board, but I might have missed it. But for at least for a month or 2, I'm gonna ask the board to just leave the status quo for the moment.
Well, we weren't going to do it until June anyway, so that's a month, basically a month away as it is. I think we have talked about some of the benefits to having it on Thursday. First thing is it gets us through the weekend. In case there's anything that comes up over a weekend, we can still add it to the agenda on Monday and have the full scope of time on that. So I think that was one of the big advantages to that.
From the staff perspective, there's a big advantage because it gives us more time to get the agenda out. What we're finding right now is we are rushing at, trying to get it done by Friday. Well, we're trying to get it out by Friday at 5, and we're finding it's difficult to meet that deadline. We're also making some small mistakes when we're rushing in that process sometimes. So allowing us staff more time to get it out is an advantage, I think.
I'm just going to ask for a delay on that till we have a little more time to contemplate, or we can vote today, but I'll be in opposition. No indifference or frustration, just simply, yeah, it would be better for these two boards in particular.
Well, why don't we plan on the June schedule like we talked about?
I know I've got some conflicts too, but I did send those to Julie, so.
Right. And it looked like we could work around those. It was only once a month, so.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had some others there listed too, as you recall. Okay.
Well, why don't we put this off till the next meeting then before we do that? And let's, if we can, in the next 2 weeks, kind of everyone decide what your conflicts are. And if we can work around it, then we'll work around it. And if we can't, we won't. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner updates?
About 6 or 7 last night, I decided not to drive to Bend. And I forgot to cancel my Motel 6 reservation, so that's on my personal credit card. But I decided I need to be here today, and 11-hour round trip drive to the Governor's Fire Council was just a bit more than I was willing to take on and drive all the way there late yesterday. So I have somebody taking good notes for me. It's a very important board, but that's why, if you're wondering why I showed up today, decision I made at the last moment. Mr. Chair, I want to say thank you publicly to you on the security cameras, the hard work you did, the money we saved. It's something I've been working on despite opposition, and I'm just glad that we got that done. I had the opportunity to go with Parks Director Hopkins to the 3 parks owned by the Forest Service up Elk River. I've been up Elk River since I was a kid, and it is just unbelievably fabulous up there. I was telling Tim Palmer and others, it reminds me of the Scott River when you get up in the canyon, and one of the main tributaries to the Klamath, Northern California. And so it was kind of a neat renewal. And the parks are not in bad shape, and I think Mr. Hopkins is on the right track there. I think the Forest Service is spending time with them. They can make that real doable for us, and I think it could be very positive for our county without a lot of extended investment right now, which we're, of course, watching very close. Spending a lot of time with, in particular right now, with Senator Wyden's office, Molly McCarthy, and Mary Gartrow. Several issues. The primary one is just how do we work the long-term and short-term benefits for Highway 101. As you know, Darren Navalny, the director of the 3 counties for ODOT, will be here on the 22nd. Very anxious to hear his report. I'm going to meet with him on Friday at the Southwest Transportation Commission in Coquille. It's our monthly meeting. Gary Milliman is the chair of that board, and he does a really good job helping us to look out for Curry County. So again, anxious to see and hear Mr. Naval's program. The slide we have at Weimer's Corner, your concern with coming from the very bottom, how that's going to be engineered to support that slide is a big concern they have. It's holding up. Thank goodness we didn't get one additional heavy rain. We don't know what the issues might have been. The salmon and trout enhancement deal Mr. Byland's working on is a little bit quiet right now, but I honestly have not had time to follow up on where that is through the legislature, but I still remain very optimistic. I will not be here Monday. I will be able to call in for part of the budget process. It doesn't start till 10, and I can make 2 very important meetings at the OC legislative days: the 7 a.m. meeting, the 9 o'clock meeting, and then I can call in for the 10, and then portions I'll be going back and forth. I decided that it's just too important for county representation right now, so I'll leave probably late Sunday and be back very late Monday, but I'll be able to help, and I will be here for the rest of the week, Mr. Chair. The only other thing I have is just a Public Employee Retirement System report that I want to give at some point here. It's almost fascinating to watch the legislature wrestle over what they're going to do on that. I think the governor showed a lot of leadership and courage to challenge about a week ago with an approach she thought might be helpful and wise and timely. So we'll see how that goes. And she met with a lot of opposition. I think actually on both parties. So that's my short report today. I'll try and be more thorough after budget week, and I think that's going to be 2 weeks from now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold?
I have a handout. And also I met with a constituent, and I thought he had a really good idea. He said, why don't we put a little plaque underneath "We Honor Veterans" in our county at both ends, and have "We Honor First Responder" signs on both of those. And I thought that was a good idea. What I did was talk to Richard Christensen, and he's investigating it to see how much it would cost. But I just thought I would tell you about that. Okay, one of the big things that's happened this last week, I've been meeting with Linda Maxon, who's the CEO of Coast Community Health. I met with her 4/25, and this is really exciting for the residents of Port Orford, because they've had some real problems getting sufficient health services up there. And so they are in the process of building a health center in Port Orford. The Umpqua Bank has donated their building to them, and they own another piece of property next to the elementary school. They applied for a large federal grant recently, and they plan to do the following. First, they're going to renovate the old building and use that for an interim health clinic with 2 exam rooms and a pharmacy. And by the way, the pharmacy prices there are significantly lower than the drug prices in the regular drug stores. After the 2 other structures are built next to the elementary school, these 2 offices will be converted to a dental exam treatment room, and a 3rd room will be added for a total of 3 dental rooms. One of the structures will be 6,000 square feet, and this will house the medical services and a pharmacy, and will include a social worker, a physician, a nurse practitioner, and support staff. And one of the exciting things is they will have some mental health services there. The medical doctor and nurse practitioner will each be available 2 days per week and will expand as needed. The other building will be a 2,800 square foot outreach center and will include community health workers, social services, laundry, showers, assistance with Medicare and Medicaid applications, and other services like drug and alcohol counseling to help those in need. And these would be our homeless population that they're going to be helping with these needs. There will also be 2 mobile homes that will be used for up to 6 OSHU medical students that will be rotating 1-month internships at the Coast Community Health Establishment and Curry Health Network and South Coos Hospital. And I met with 2 of the representatives from OSHU yesterday, and they're very excited about this internship program. And some of the interns, they've already been doing it up in Coos Bay, have ended up permanently there, and I know we've had problems retaining and recruiting good medical help here in our county. The Umpqua temporary medical site should be up and running by May 2019, and the new facility next to the school should be up and running by 2020. So I'm really excited for the Port Orford folks that they will have access to more medical help. So that's the end of my report.
Mine is rather short. First, I'd like to reiterate the TLT tax vote that we have. It'll be on the ballot for the 19th. I want to make sure everyone understands that the TLT tax is not to be used for homelessness, or, for finding residents for homelessness and those kind of things. It is a tax that is dedicated. 70% of it is for travel and leisure in the county, and the other 30% we have earmarked, or 25% of it roughly, to our sheriff's department. We have to find resources to fund this county. For too many years, this county has gone without people looking to pay the bills of the county. So this commission, I think, is dedicated to finding resources to pay our bills in this county. I am, and I'm hopeful that the constituents of this county will find value in this TLT tax and push it through. It will help with the great shortage that we have in the county right now, and it's the first start. There are a lot of small things that will make our balanced budget and bring back the resources that this county needs to grow in a very careful way. The other thing I want to report on is I'm meeting with a gentleman tomorrow that I spoke to this board about a few weeks ago, or we're meeting on Saturday, I'm sorry, in Brookings. This gentleman is interested in possibly donating a little over 5 acres to the county, if we will earmark that for low-income housing, and with an earmark on that for veterans. So we are going to hopefully meet on Saturday morning to discuss that further, and I'll be able to report to the board on that at our next meeting, and we can move forward with that as quickly as we can. With that being said, I think a sheriff told me the other day he got 45 pounds of drugs brought in. He also told us that anyone in this county that has anything or finds anything that they would like to drop off, you can do that at the locations that were on the at the sheriff's office here locally and the other substation down in Brookings Harbor at any time, any day, with no questions being asked. So we commend him for that. I'm also excited, very excited about having a K-9 unit in this county. I think the additional protection for our police officers in the current situation of our society, as well as drug sniffing dogs that can also help with search and rescue for lost people and cadavers, that kind of thing. Being trained for those kind of things, they're going to be essential to the sheriff's department. And it's nice to hear a report yesterday from him that the sweep that they had on the sex offender thing this past week. His comment was said off the cuff yesterday, but I took it to heart. And that is, imagine that when we have a sheriff's department that's funded to do things, what we can accomplish. And if you look at what our sheriff's department is starting to get done in this county, to have these additional resources like the TLT, that we can have more deputies on the road and have 24-hour coverage in this county, because the crooks sure know when the sheriffs are off duty. So to be able to have 24-hour surveillance in this county again, to be able to have a drug dog team and a protection dog team for the officers, to me is very important. And that's all I have. This meeting is adjourned.
Wow.